Freedom Friday Forum participants. It's good to be here. We have a few things to do protocol-wise as normal, and we will do that beginning with the preamble of the Constitution of the UNIA ACL, 100 plus years old. So now, folks, let us begin. This is the preamble of the Constitution of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. That was promulgated in 1920 by our ancestral founders of the UNIA ACL, of whom we are very proud and of whom we walk in their footprints to do that job of bringing African people out of whatever malaise may be. It's been 100 years since, and we are still in the struggle. The Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League is a social, friendly, humanitarian, charitable, educational, institutional, constructive, and expansive society, and is founded by persons desiring to the utmost to work for the general uplift of the Negro peoples of the world. And the members pledge themselves to do all in their power to conserve the rights of their noble race and to respect the rights of all mankind, believing always in the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God. The motto of the organization is one God, one aim, one destiny. Therefore, let justice be done to all mankind, realizing that if the strong oppresses the weak, confusion and discontent will ever mark the path of man, but with love, faith, and charity towards all, the reign of peace and plenty will be heralded into the world, and the generations of men shall be called blessed. I will continue by also relating to you the short version of the objects and aims of the UNIA ACL. The objects of the Universal Improvement Association and African Communities League shall be to establish a universal confraternity among the race, to promote the spirit of pride and love, to reclaim the fallen, to administer to and assist the needy, to assist in civilizing the backward peoples of Africa, to assist in the development of independent Negro nations and communities, to establish commissionaries of agencies in the principal countries and cities of the world for the representation and protection of all Negroes, irrespective of nationality, to promote a conscientious spiritual worship among the native tribes of Africa, to establish universities, colleges, academies, and schools for the racial education and culture of the people, to conduct a worldwide commercial and industrial intercourse for the good of the people, to work for the better conditions in all Negro communities. That's just the short version. The longer version will take some time. But then again, part of our protocol in the beginning, our monthly or bi-weekly or 2 forums per month protocol is to relate the official UNIA pledge to the flag, the red, black, and green flag that was created by the UNIA ACL and is the flag of African people, of Black peoples of the world. I commit my body, mind, and spirit to the protection, defense, and security of the red, black, and green. I dedicate my life to the redemption of Mother Africa and the liberation of her scattered Black children. I accept for myself and my descendants the teachings of universal African nationalism, and I promise that our children will be instilled with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people, in order that the cause of our struggle will neither falter nor fail until all Black people are free and united through one God, one aim, one destiny. There goes that pledge. And of course, we would like to say that we do strongly believe that that red, black, and green flag should be honored by all Black people, all peoples of the world, as the flag of all African people, but it also represents a government flag of the UNIA ACL. It was promulgated as such, and for such, we do respect it. Now, that was a very short introduction or opening ritual, and that gives a lot of time for those who are coming up to make their remarks. And I will do something here that is, according to Dr. Chen, I can't, she has a way of opening in a spiritual manner. So, Dr. Chen, I am going to turn this over to you so that you can do what is necessary in opening and making your opening remarks. Dr. Chen.
Greetings. Yes, I'm coming forth. I needed to take a moment to get things back in order.
Okay.
Blessed greetings, everyone. Hotep, Alafia, hail up, Wagwan. It's always an honor and a privilege to be part of the discussion with action plans linked to it on Freedom Fridays. I'm very humbled by the theme on Africans and Latin America. So for the purposes of this discussion, I will hold sacred space on that term Latin. We'll come back to that. For the purposes of opening, I encourage everyone to still their mind, to open up their heart, to bring body, mind, soul, spirit, and consciousness into the fullness of how we're going to have this discussion. It's always interesting when we speak of, quote, Latin America or Africans in Spanish-speaking regions, countries, nations, and we're speaking in English. So we're going to take a pause and just go within and just ask that the manner in which we share, the manner in which we have this discourse on Africans, Afro-descendants in Spanish-speaking parts of this region that people call Latin America, the Caribbean, the Americas in general, because as honest as we need to be, this incorporates not only Mexico, Cuba, Venezuela, República Dominicana, as well as Colombia, and people bring in Brazil, although it's Portuguese. There are indigenous languages, there's an indigenous culture that's linked to the Latin Americas, as people refer to it. Remember, we used to say America, and people thought it only meant the 48 contiguous. When we say the Americas, we're including from Canada all the way south into South America. So that's a lot of regions where there are a large population of persons that are Spanish speakers and have no apology and no shame linked to their linkage to the African ancestral ancient experience. So with that, I greet in the manner of Amasu and Panter, Sauksuan Kran Panter, Ta Autu Auma Keti Paharu. And I'm simply saying, we give thanks and praise to the one most high. We live each day daily for the one most divine, and we shall do it tomorrow, just as we do it today, to keep things concise. One of the opening reflections that I'd like to highlight is that we're having this particular Freedom Fridays discussion. Some people say panel presentation. It's more informal, and just we're making sure that we're providing the formality of links and ways in which people can learn more about revolutionary movements around the African experience, the Afro-descendants experience within this space that people refer to as Latin America, that you will keep hearing me say African spaces where our brothers and sisters speak Spanish, right? And as well as Portuguese and other indigenous languages. This is also a time where a number of our sisters and brothers, as recent as the 24th of January, while the UNESCO designated World Day for African and Afro-descendant culture is highlighted since 2019, the intention has always been around celebrating the vibrancy, the prosperity, the historical legacies that are linked to African continental and African diasporic experiences literally around the world. For the purposes of this evening's Freedom Fridays discussion, the highlight I'd like to share on are the number of different revolutionary movements of persons that clearly link within their African ancestral legacy alongside these other names that people call, whether it's Puerto Rico, whether it's Cuba, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's Uruguay, whether it's Paraguay, whether it's Raizal, San Andreas, etc., whether it's Colombia. And it's really important that we remember that a lot of times when we're having these types of discussions, there's a number of sisters and brothers that are part of that revolutionary movement. And through the evening, I'm going to, alongside our other panelists and discussants, hopefully share some of the names of those organizations, some of the ties to Africans that are Spanish speakers in these spaces in the Americas. For those persons that need to know, or probably, why is Dr. Chen? She's really into Africa. She's a Pan-Africanist. She serves as the High Commissioner General for, quote, the Caribbean Americas. And I'm very specific on that.
And what kind you want you to take her to?
And I believe someone,
Upper County.
okay, someone needs to be muted. 30 seconds.
She muted.
Okay, give thanks. Ideally, I just want to make sure that persons are aware my familial upbringing is out of multiple spaces in the Caribbean where Dutch is spoken, Papiamento, spaces like St. Martin, República Dominicana, Spanish. And when I speak of St. Martin, we're speaking Dutch, Papiamento, yes, but also remembering French is there as well. When we speak of República Dominicana, there would have never been a Dominican Republic, AKA Santo Domingo, had there not been IT. And there is a undercurrent amongst African descendants that are revolutionary in these spaces that know of the ties that we must have and the respect that we must have. And I'm tying this to Freedom Friday's discussion a couple of weeks ago on IT, because a lot of what happens throughout the Americas, whether it's Spanish speaking, Portuguese speaking, Papiamento, English, French, and all of the Creoles, etc., would not have manifested with the fullness in which they did had there not been this powerful African revolutionary movement for nationhood, for sovereign power, that African fundamentalism that's grounded in Garveyism out of Haiti. So I shared that particular part just in case persons, she lives in the Virgin Islands, she's in Santa Cruz. Why is she speaking on this Latin American piece? It's because of what my 99-year-old mother has shared with me coming out of República Dominicana, what many revolutionaries that were Garveyites out of these regions where they're speaking Spanish as their primary language. And it's important that we keep that respect. So I will shadow for this portion here. I'm really grateful to have very distinguished discussants on this particular Freedom Fridays. And I'm looking forward to the outcomes, like what are we doing? What are some of the things that we can move forward towards? And what are some of the organizational linkages that we're going to be strengthening? Give thanks for the opportunity to open, Baba Mosa.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jenzera Kahina. Well, she described or related part of her life. I know there's a lot more to her than what was expounded, but yes, we are so grateful to have her as our High Commissioner General. And those of us in the UNIA ACL RC2020, High Commissioner General for Central America and the Caribbean. And we draw on her knowledge, her experiences, and her wisdom. So that was Dr. Chen. And I will continue now to introduce to you some of the others, the other presenters on tonight. The next one listed is Dr. David Horn. And Dr. Horn is another stalwart, another person of in our high command, so to speak. He is the international organizer of the UNIA ACL RC2020, which means he has the responsibility of moving around the world and networking and putting together, those links that will put the UNIA ACL RC2020 in connection with other peoples of the world and other organizations of the world. He's been a long time, decades of being a Pan-Africanist and working on the continent. He is involved in some projects at this moment in the continent. And when I did not hear from him today, I thought he might have been in Ghana, where I understand there is a 6th region flag opening or flag unfurling. I'm not sure how to state that, but I'm glad that he's with us tonight. And Dr. Horn, would you like to say a few words in introduction? On mute. Yeah. We're not hearing you. You're still muted. We'll give you, no, we're not hearing you. We're seeing that you're talking, we're seeing that you're saying something, but okay, yeah, it looks like you're unmuted, but I have no idea why we can't hear you. Maybe it's a volume issue.
Check your headphones, David.
Okay, well, listen, what we can do is let you try to solve that issue, that problem that may be happening with your audio. And let me continue with the introductions in the meantime. The next person listed is Bamboshe Shango, who is also a long time, decades long Pan-Africanist, world African activist. We can say a lot about him, but we also know he has a connection with Africans in Latin America. He's been struggling for a long time to ensure that people in Latin America, not just Africans, are free of imperial domination. And I am assuming that part of that is because for instance, he's part of the Friends of Cuba, who are trying to get rid of this Cuban this U.S. not Cuban this U.S. embargo on the Cuban economy, and also he's been active with Latin Americans in other African Latin Americans as well as other Latin Americans, and he's been long in the struggle, and I'm sure he has quite a bit to say about what he thinks of the situation today. Brother Bamboshe.
Hey, my brother.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm good, and yourself?
Good. Hello to everybody. I see you, Brother Singor there, and Brother David Horn, Sister Rafiki. Good to see everybody. I had to struggle to get on today. I don't know what's wrong with this computer, but those things happen when you have a program like this to get on. I just want to today try to touch bases with some specific countries and then talk in general, specifically Cuba, Venezuela, Honduras, Nicaragua.
Okay. Well, we look forward to your opinions, your voice in support of the peoples of Latin America. And, we're specific to Africans in Latin America on this forum, but it does not mean we are not concerned, as you heard us reading from our Constitution. We care about everyone, but we also must care for self first, and that specifically has to deal with how the capitalist world deals with us. So we will hear you later. What you have to say, we'll come back to you. But we first must go to another African brother who has been in the struggle for decades again. And this is a brother who I have been alongside and heard his passion for the African people in Latin America. I've heard his passion in calling for certain remedies to the way things are done by the U.S. government or peoples in Latin America. And I respect this brother who is an artist par excellence, who is a construction engineer. And I mean, I've seen some of his work, and I've seen him working, so I know what I'm talking about. And so I present to you Brother Rafiki Morris. Brother Rafiki, you're muted.
I'm supposed to know better by now, but seeing all these powerful African faces got me nervous, and I forgot how to work the machine. Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to come and break bread with my brothers and sisters. You said this was a panel discussion, but it looked like a family discussion.
Hey.
And
yes, indeed.
and I have to admit, I really like family discussions because sometimes when you're not as formal, you can go a little deeper, and you can dig a little harder. And so, you know, we can share something. My interest is specifically related to this discussion is something that our sister Shinzira brought up, and that is the question of resistance. I don't think that you can talk about Africans and also this idea of Africans in Latin America, you know, because, you know, they like to categorize us by our language that we speak. And a big part of this Pan-Africanist struggle is transcending the barrier of language. So, and that is one of the things that hinders our ability to resist. So I like to talk about the resistance as in its place throughout the process of populating these settler colonies in the Western Hemisphere, especially the ones that speak Spanish. But a lot of it's the same thing, regardless to the languages that we speak. So I'm very interested in see what comes of this conversation.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and you know, the format of this these for we call it a forum, but let me say it's family discussion indeed. You know, we try not to be too formal, and because we want people to be at ease and express themselves, so that we can get the truth out. And I think you know, there shouldn't be any fear of being mad at somebody because of what they say. We all are here to discuss, you know, our opinions and without prejudice, so to speak. So I will now, you know, I will go back to Dr. Chen because, you know, she's our leading advocate in this area here. So let me go back to her. If she wants to direct this, that's in her lap. You know what I'm
Okay,
saying?
well, I'm grateful. I'm very grateful for
Yeah.
that vote
Okay.
of confidence and that vote of thanks. I desire to really come forward to some of the organizational entities. There are the Caribbean Peace Movement. There are the La Raza all over different portions. There are Indigena organizations that blend the indigenous, what people refer to as Native Amerindian cultures, and tie that to the African descendant, original African indigenous cultures. And these are very Pan-African centered types of movements. And there's like a space between what is Pan-African and layers inside of Afro-descendant leading organizational entities. I would be remiss if I did not speak of one of the scholars, spiritual guides, and Ia right here in our midst, in our neighboring isle of Puerto Rico, and she has traversed around the globe, and that is Dr. Marta Vega. And I want to highlight her work because she did so much in different parts of, quote, Latin America, and focused on the African diasporic element through the arts, through science, through education, and is now linked to a multiplicity of organizations that are always moving in that vibrational energy of how do you uplift African revolutionary, Pan-Africanism, African fundamentalism, and those elements that are tied to the essence of Garvey's movement in this region of Spanish-speaking Africans, even when some of them do go into a denial space of not connecting or not feeling that they are African in contemporary times. And that's a time for another discourse, because for tonight, at least on my portion, I would really like to, I'd like to just share a declaration that came out last year, just so it was translated in English for us by revolutionary comrade Corinne Duffus out of San Andreas. San Andreas, by what I'm about to read to you, you will understand what is also happening amongst Africans in Latin America, so-called. In this case, San Andreas, Isla Providencia, and Catalina Island are colonies. Let's make sure we say this nicely. Non-incorporated, non-self-governing territories, colonies of Colombia. And these are islands that are populated, inhabited for centuries by people of African ancestry. And they have been demanding and decreeing and engaged in revolutionary action to reclaim little islands. But I just want to share that last year in September, they had a formal declaration by the authority of the Constitution and laws of the Republic of Colombia that recognize and protect the rights of the Aboriginal, Indigenous, and tribal people like us, the native islanders, also known as raizales, living within its territory, and in particular ruling C-053 of 1999 of Colombia's Constitutional Court and Decree 064 of 2014, both of which declare that the archipelago of San Andreas, Old Providence, and Santa Catalina or Catalina are and have traditionally been the ancestral ethnic territories of us native islanders. And in accordance with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other international legal instruments, which pertain to protect and promote the human rights of all Aboriginal, Indigenous, and tribal people like us, we, the native islanders of the islands of San Andreas, Providencia, and Catalina, who are part of the Raizal, Indigenous, and tribal nation of San Andreas, or Providence, and Catalina. And that was September 20th of 2021. And inside of this declaration, which is public information, they speak to their native ethnicity, of their ties literally to the soil. Not just that the land belonged to us because we've been here from, they go into a very serious ancestral, historical, cultural legacy of their ties to the actual soil. And then they speak to the political, economic, and cultural activities and power and control and their ancestral tie to this land from back in the 1800s and even further back to that space where people refer to as, when people hear indígena, they only think of Indians. And a lot of people forget that some of the most indigenous people to the entire earth, and whoever questions it, we can deal with me on another side, people of African ancestry. We didn't just pop up during the trade experience, the enslavement, triangular or otherwise. I think it was more quadruplex than triangular, but that's another conversation. On a serious note, we were traversing out of the space known as the African continent, out of that 12 million square mile space for millennia. So of course you're going to find African roots, African descended legacy inside of these spaces called the Americas, whether they're speaking Espanol, Francais, Portuguese, doesn't matter. You're going to find that. The key part that stuck inside of this declaration from the Raizal are the connections they had to indigenous persons that are within these spaces of the Americas speaking Spanish and other indigenous languages, and to the African continent. And it's inside of their recognition statements on their historic rights. It's inside of their demand for full self-governance. It's inside of their demand of having control and power, and notice these terms, full self-government over our ancestral ethnic territory. I'm just reading from the document. And then they go deeper and begin to compartmentalize in all of these different resolutions that the UN and AU and EU and US and all these other entities speak of around these committees for decolonization. And they get to the core of what their decree, their declaration is about their self-determination. And then it lists the connectivity to Colombia, Nicaragua, Panama, Costa Rica, Honduras, Belize, Mexico, Guatemala, Jamaica, because a lot of persons forget how many Spanish speakers are in spaces that we think only speak English, and Venezuela in particular, and then they navigate how they have engaged in revolutionary exchange. And I say revolutionary exchange because they're questioning the very core of what the UN, quote, Declaration of Human Rights developed in 1948, while they were violating human rights around the globe, especially to people of African ancestry. So I think it's really important that we look at this particular document, offer that respectful support and dialogue with the raizales in San Andreas, Isla Providencia, and Santa Catalina, because a lot of persons will speak of certain progressive activity, which there are in spaces like Venezuela, Colombia, etc., Brazil as well, of course, Cuba. And we overlook that some of these entities are colonizing spaces in the region where it's predominantly African people. And that has to stop. So I'm hoping that, I didn't want to spend a lot of time just on Raizal because there's a lot of course that I know other discussants can speak to in Cuba. I want to make sure that we see that connection of how important it is when we're supporting Haiti. We have to press any entity in the Dominican Republic that is pressing any negativity to Haiti. That has to be crushed, period. And this is coming from one socialized, grew up in that area, San Pedro de Macorís to be exact, right? So I'm just going to navigate, there's the Caribbean Pan-African Network, which has representation that are throughout the region and have been involved with various efforts, of course, in Cuba as well. A lot of efforts are around Cuba and its release of this embargo, which is really not even, it's just inhumane. It's beyond that. And the COVID-19 piece and their successes in medical engagements is just making the US and the UK, Europe fall apart because Cuba has always been at the top of the standards of excellence in medical everything. So science, arts. So that's another piece that comes forward. And at some point, if time permits, I will share some of the names of persons that are in these countries that we can link with to begin to get like on the ground, current, updated reports, again, that are properly translated into English and not just Google translated. It's very important because the idioms change and you can sense who is really moving in a revolutionary form and trajectory versus who is just taking up space, right? Let's move it forward.
Yes, thank you again, my sister. Well, that was a picture of a part of the, again, the quote unquote Latin America I mean, when do we ever hear of San Andreas and all these places in the news or even the African news we hear in the America? So thank you for that, expanding our knowledge on what is happening in that part. As you see, folks, the theme is having to do with the United Nations declared decade for African descendants. And what we want to discuss as well or deeper is where do we see any improvement in the relationships of Africans in the Americas to the more populous group of peoples who may be in control or in governance in some of these areas, and how far can we expect them to go within the next 2 years, because it's already 8 years since 2015. It's already 8 years we're in this decade, And I mean, we can look back to history before that and everything, but within this decade where we expected so much should happen because the United Nations made that declaration. But somehow, are we marking time? Where are we going? And Dr. Horn, you being our international organizer, and I'm saying this that your area has to have be something with the United Nations and the African African AU, the AU African Union. I'm sorry.
I don't know whether David has sound yet with us. David?
Yes. Oh, he doesn't have sound?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry, David, but since we can't hear you, we're gonna have to. You're actually right now, David. You are muted. Like if you unmute, let's see if we can hear you. Still can't.
Brother, maybe you can use the phone to link in on the phone for the sound.
Okay, he says okay, he'll try that. Okay, that's good. All right. Well, you came in just in time.
Yeah, that's what I say, Baba Moses. In the meantime, let's hear from our good brothers.
Yeah, you came in just in time, Brother Van Bush. Let's hear your take on what's going on right now.
Okay, thank you, bro. I always hope that my perspective has some effect on people, but sometimes it doesn't. I think that, yes, this is the UN Decade of the African. And the UN, of course, as you know, back in 1999, 2000, had the first conference on xenophobia and related intolerance, racism, etc. And at that conference, they came with a very interesting statement. They said that slavery is a crime against humanity and should have always been so. Now, that's very legalistic language, because if it wasn't always so, when did it become so? And so the UN has actually provided a shield for itself against the whole question of slavery from when it originated in this hemisphere, by saying that it may not have been a crime then, but now it's a crime. Slavery has always been a crime. And as such, we're happy, but maybe a little confused on this question of the Decade of the African. We see a number of things that they want done, but we don't see them talking about the Africans in the African diaspora, the entire African diaspora, not just the Africans in this hemisphere, but what about the Africans in the Middle East, the Africans in Asia, the Africans in the Far East, in Papua New Guinea, for example? Are they part of this discussion? And not only are they part of this discussion, at what point do they link this discussion to the question of anti-colonialism, the question of anti-neocolonialism, the whole question of the exploitation of African as a people? So I would say that to say that there is a struggle going on in South and Central America. One of the primary struggles that is taking place is the struggle around identity, who we are, what we are. Because you know, in Africa, we have over 800 languages. So the language question is not a problem. The question is, who are we? Because that determines a primary struggle should be pointed, should be aimed. And if we're only a part of one little country that was stolen from the indigenous people here, even though we are also indigenous, then we don't concentrate on our continent, which is the richest continent on the face of the earth. So I say that to say that in terms of us as Africans in this hemisphere, our struggle is impacted on primarily, first and foremost, by US colonialism, by US imperialism, and then by other forms of colonialism, neocolonialism, neoliberalism, like the Canadians, the Europeans, and even the countries in South and Central America themselves. Because today you have NATO and the US posed
Yeah.
He froze up. He'll be back in a little bit, I guess.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, he's having some Wi-Fi issues, most likely. Bambushi, are you back with us? No. Okay, hopefully we'll get him back. I hope he's hearing that we're saying we can't hear him or see him right now. Brother Amboshi, we'll come back to you. I think we get somewhat the gist of what you were saying, but you may have more. So what I'm going to do here is move on to someone who as an old brother in the struggle may have similar or unsimilar views or dissimilar, is that the term? Regardless of what it is, as a family, we are going to discuss their views considering we're talking about about the Americas. We do not exclude the rest of the world when it comes to African people. But, Marcus Garvey, in his travels, he traveled the Americas, and that was one of the things he did was try to connect all African peoples in the Americas, as well as the world. But the Americas is important for us, since those of us who are here in the US, they are our neighbors, and we can say that they're in our yard. It's an African people, and we're all in the same yard, right, in the Americas, and we need to connect. But I'm gonna go over to Brother Rafiki. Brother Rafiki.
Hello. Okay. Actually, I guess I could kind of pick up where Bambushi left off. I mean, I can't be too far from him because I was brought up by him.
There you go.
And I believe you don't deny your roots, because you might have to go home someday.
Yes.
I quickly, and I don't know, different people have different views about this, but my views of the United Nations Decade for People of African Descent, I think it was a year before, or a year and a half before, they had the year of the people of African descent, and then they didn't do nothing in that year, so they came back with a decade of people of African descent. And I challenge anybody to seriously show me where they've done anything for the people of African descent, except for remain in cahoots with American imperialism and continue the process of exploiting the labor of African peoples in this hemisphere, in Africa, and dominating the African world. You know, these institutions, and it's not just the United Nations and the African Union, which I have a particular disgust for because it is a home base for neo-colonialists. But you have the Organization of American States. You have, what's that school? They got a school, the School of the Americas, where they train mercenaries to suppress the people throughout Latin America, with trainers that come from Israel and taking the lessons that they've learned in the suppression of the Palestinian people and teaching it to young Africans and Latin American people who see the military as a potential career, and then send them into our communities as representatives of the states that are oppressing us and exploiting us. So, and I think, I mean, I've always thought that you can trace history many ways. You can look at the history of art, you can look at the history of culture, you can look at the history of pigs, because you know it didn't always used to be pigs in the Americas. That's something else the Europeans brought over here. But you could also look at the history of resistance. And when you do that, you start seeing linkages and connections that cross these language barriers and that have continued to spread throughout this hemisphere. And you will find that our people everywhere really are doing the same thing. The particulars change, you know, but anywhere that there was a large number of Africans in this hemisphere, you'll find a maroon community that maintained its African roots, that connected with the Aboriginal peoples, that even maintained some old communal approaches to social life that was stripped away from us here in the Americas. So there's this retention that is not some academic thing. It's a life that our people are living in these countries. And more we find that these realities are being acknowledged and recognized and are coming to light. If it wasn't for the Haitian Revolution, there wouldn't have been an independence movement in the Caribbean or the entire Southern Hemisphere. If you study the movement for independence in the Caribbean and South America, you'll find that movement was always multinational. It was never, I'm gonna free my country, and that was the end of it. It was always, I'm gonna free my country, then we're gonna move on to the next country. Then we're gonna move on to the next country. Then we're gonna move on to the next country. And that attitude was born in Haiti. It was born in Haiti. It was Haiti that gave life and breath and direction and material resources to the Bolivarian Revolution. It was Haiti that contributed to the rise of Martí and the other revolutionary forces in Cuba. So, and these folks have been punishing Haiti for that ever since, to this very day, because they know that the revolution is not just about numbers. The revolution is not just about who has the most guns or who has the most money. The revolution is about the spirit of a people who are not content to be slaves, not content to be exploited, not content to be oppressed, not content to have our children being abused and oppressed, and our women being abused and oppressed. people who want to be free. And so I like for us to look at the hemisphere from the perspective of this resistance. And I think when you do that, you get a better understanding of what's going on. You can't talk about what happened in Venezuela without talking about the Africans in Venezuela. They wasn't on the side of the Venezuelan revolution, waiting for it to happen, and then they jumped in and said, I want mines too. No, they were at the base of it. They were a part, it's 26 different parties in that Venezuelan Revolutionary People's Socialist Party, 26 organizations, and the Africans are right up in there. That is their party. If you talk to them, they will tell you, this is my party. This is my government. It's not separate and apart. And they're very much aware of their Africanness. You find the same thing in Nicaragua. You find the same thing in Bolivia. You find the same thing in Cuba. And in Cuba, that feeling of that Africanness is so strong that they've actually sent 50,000 troops to Africa to fight against imperialism. In Mozambique, in Angola, in Namibia, in Guinea-Bissau. And if you ask the Cubans, they'll tell you that their greatest army is the army of doctors that they have going around the world, helping people fight illness and sickness. So that their resistance is a part of our resistance as a people everywhere. And it's important for us to understand it. It's important for us to connect with it. And it's important for us to, the neo-colonialism that is running rampant on the African continent today was first developed in the settler colonies of the West. The first capitalist neo-colonies was settler colonies in the United States, in the Western Hemisphere. And they had practiced this neo-colonialism for more than 100 years before they reached that stage in Africa. So they practiced on the people of the Americas what they're now practicing on us in Africa. So these things are so connected, they're so interrelated. The other thing we ought to realize is that them boundaries in South and Central America, except for the islands maybe, and even that is not sacrosanct, but them boundaries, just like the boundaries, the borderline between us and Mexico and us and Canada and all them boundaries in Africa was drawn by these imperialist settler colonialist pigs who was trying to steal people's land. So when we confine ourselves to these borders, I mean, it's a material reality. We understand the role that nationalism plays, but at the same time, especially for Africans, we have to have a higher calling. We have to be connected to what our people are doing all over the world. We have to transcend. We have to take the things that divide us, and use that as a bridge to unite us. So I say Africans speak every language. I don't, but we do. We speak Spanish, Portuguese, English. We speak all of those native languages. We speak all the various Creole languages. People think Trinidadians speak English. I spent 12 years down there, and what they speaking, that ain't English. That's a different language. And we speak all of them languages. But we have to have things that bind us together that transcend the languages, transcend the geography, and at the same time translates into action on the ground, wherever you might be. Because if you're serious about freeing the people, wherever you are, you need to be fighting capitalism and imperialism. You can't be sitting around acting like somebody else got to do that, because that's where you are, that's where we are, and that's how we fight. If we fight them everywhere we are, then we are in a position to defeat them everywhere they are. So the resistance is the key thing to me. The resistance is what binds us together. The resistance is what connects us to Africa. The resistance is what separates us from these neo-colonial henchmen in the United Nations and the Organization of American States and NATO and all of these other international organizations don't care nothing about us. They're the ones, they killed Gaddafi, they killed Lumumba, they was in on the murder of Malcolm X. We know what they did to Nkrumah, to Sekou Touré, to Modibo Keita, to Allende. We know the 400 different attempts they made on the life of our Comandante, Fidel Castro. We understand these things. And we are not naive in this struggle any longer. So I think that that's the key for us. We have to fight, and we have to fight together until we win. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, my brother.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, indeed. Let me see. It's brother Bamboshe. Is he back? Are you back on, Baba? He's not. Oh boy, that's.
I don't see Bambosia in the
He's not even linked right now, right?
no, I don't see him in the linkage right now. Dr. Horn, can we hear you? Oh, he still can't hear you.
Okay. Well, all right. I'll tell you what. I'll go back to Sister Director Dr. Chanzira and to continue from there and start a plot for us.
Yeah, can Dr. Horn, can you call? Can somebody get him on the phone? Is there some way we can get Dr. Horn in through the phone so we can hear him?
I think he was trying to do that and it didn't happen.
Right. I think what he was attempting to do was to work on his sound. So we're going to give him, because there's some things he needs that I see him listing, but I would appreciate him bringing up what I'm putting inside of our chat on Facebook so that our viewers on the live stream can have an idea of what we're speaking to. I'm really grateful for the elder bringing forth the connections of the importance of dismantling. I tend to use the word crush, but the more accurate term is really moving in the direction of decolonization, moving in the direction of smashing, another term I'd like to use, imperialism, capitalism, and all of its policies. You know, the vibration with the mercenary piece is very real. Some of the links that have been shared and some of the things that are around, even what, because it's interesting, the UN, the AU, the EU, the International Monetary Fund, the International Criminal Court, that tends to only bring people of African ancestry or people of color into that realm and actually find them guilty. And that's been an ongoing challenge when we speak of Africans in Latin America. There are many brothers and sisters that overlook the fact that we have Yanga. We have, you know, when we look at Mexico, people just, you know, think Mexicans all look like these Mayan indigenous family members, when in actuality, we need to go into the ruticle element from back in the 1500s, right? To learning about great revolutionary independence movements, one of the early ones in that Veracruz area and that whole vibration led by revolutionary Yanga. Most persons don't speak of that. People don't remember revolutionary women like Carlota in Cuba, even though there are these beautiful monuments and busts and historical discussions and conferences and seminars and educational, to a point, programs. These aren't things that are always brought forth in this space of the Americas South, where Spanish is the primary language. There are a number of areas as we've discussed in Colombia, colonies of Colombia, as well as the manner in which Africans in Colombia are engaged or not. We can speak of what people refer to as Afro-Ecuadorians, and there's a very prominent African revolutionary series of movements, organizations that have been moving in the direction for all the times of their existence for liberation, destruction of capitalist, imperialist policies and engagements. And a lot of times we miss out on the very critical discourse around those themes, around those ideas, because we tend to focus, and I'll hold it like it is, on the 48 contiguous US, a little bit of Africa, maybe occasionally UK, a little bit of Europe, possibly Canada on certain occasions, and the other areas kind of get, morphed into something where we're not as engaged as we ought to be. So that's why those organizational entities that are very capitalist, very imperialist, very terrorism focused in their engagement and delivery, definitely participatory in most assassinations of virtually every African leader. And this, again, it goes back, the history of assassinations, executions, torture, barbaric, horrific engagements towards Africans who move in the direction of sovereign power. I'm going to use this phrase, African fundamentalism, during the Garvey time forward and before that. Most of them are left into situations where economics are a question of strength, where political power is completely stripped, where the women as well as the men and children are. Now we can. Yes, Dr. Horn, I will pause.
You do not need to pause, my sister.
Right, but ideally, because we definitely would like to have you weigh in. I'm just really giving like an overview of, and again, some of this may appear to be academic, but what I'm sharing is what we get to hear in folklore and griot elders passing from mouth to ear, sharing with us these different legacy teachings, like who really liberated Haiti and allowed for what they thought was going to be a blending of Africans that were able to be competent in mastering English, Spanish, French, and any other languages that were passing through what was Hispaniola, before that Quisqueya. I mean, we can get into some really deep elements because even some of the data that is, has been shared, and I really want to give props to wonderful and profound revolutionary ancestor, I should say, Dr. Tony Martin. His publication on Caribbean history gave a lot of references of what was happening, not only in the English-speaking Caribbean, but what was happening in the, quote, Latin America, and the influences and the intentional disruption of our humanity in this region, and how they used language as well as complexion, not just being African, but the hues, that the way that they broke down that mulatto, postais, mostais, mestizos, criollos, whatever term they used to create more dissension. Like that's something that's very rampant in the Spanish speaking spaces. You hear terms like assimilados, assimilators, that really dismantled the revolutionary fervor for some, because they were able to get power and authority and engagement. But it also created a very vibrant, powerful, and even if they had to go stealth, even if they were chopping up all their body parts, they were forerunners of many of the revolutionary thought processes and engagements. So that's why it's important that when we have these discourses around Africans that are speaking Spanish or any other language, that we begin to look at first, what are our similarities? And I agree that these other agencies that are puppeteering masters are designed to keep us away from the very radical part of our sovereign power, our ancestral liberation in contemporary times. However, That's why if we're going to have any kind of engagement with them, especially entities like the African Union, especially entities like CARICOM in these regions, then we need to make sure that all of this historiography and cultural heritage information is streamlined, because then they have no choice, no course other than to respect and honor. What is the theme of that International Decade for People of African Descent? Recognition, justice, and development for people of African descent. Anytime that we're doing anything, UNIA, ACL, RC2020, or any other organizational entity, we speak of IDPAC, we push recognition, justice, and development for people of African descent, which means that there's a certain criteria, there's a standard of excellence, there's a particular work. And of course, it's about crushing, dismantling the exploitative terrorism that is tied to capitalism, imperialism, and all its other little friends. You know, I include medical apartheid, medical terrorism, okay, environmental injustice, all right, all this reparatory engagement that we tend to have to deal with. I shouldn't ever have to be questioned on my Africanicity, my African rootedness, as Baba, our first Assistant President General, Senghor Vayet always says, Blacktricity, not even just African centricity, but Blacktricity, just add the whole vibration so that we stay powerful. It's important that we bring that in the heights when we're having these types of discourses, because there's been an oversight, if you will. And I'm sure all of us have different stories. You know, some people have had wonderful, engaging stories. You know, being in a revolutionary space like Cuba is very different than being in Colombia or Venezuela, much less Ecuador. We won't even get into Argentina and Paraguay and Peru, because it's a different priority there. However, there's a and I need for all of us to keep that in mind, even organizations like the Central American Black organizations, CABO, you know, we overlook sometimes that we have brothers and sisters. I mean, African revolutionaries, you know, have made serious life sacrifices, engaged in movements around the world that live in Panama. You understand? And we should all remember the connection that Panama has to the entire region. Costa Rica as well. Honduras, Belize. I mean, there's some progressive forces in those areas, and because of language and geographic distancing, now complicated by more physical and social distancing, we tend not to get an opportunity to keep up on many of those organizational entities. So that's the part that, in terms of what's being shared, you know, inside of this Zoom space, what's being shared inside of the Facebook page, and I'm encouraging anyone that has, you know, if you're a part of a revolutionary organization that is supporting Africans in, quote, Latin America, in Spanish-speaking spaces, share that information so that we can begin to strengthen our ties in action, not just in the chat, but in terms of what are we doing together? How are we building together? How are we financing together? How are we building our own businesses together? How are we educating together? Those are the things that I'd like to really make, that as we close out this next layer of discourse, let us build in that regard. I would really like to encourage all of the other discussants to share that.
Okay.
Thank you again, my sister.
Yep.
You give me fever, I tell you. Whenever you mention these colorations, I tell you, it's, you know, the blood boils, because you know, when you engage in these things as an experience, it you know, it's not just the blood boils. It's like you hear, you know, because what you've experienced, and you know, we have our own people who these colorations is what these layers of Africanness that's around that really is troublesome. Before I go to Dr. Horn, Baba Congo had his hands up, and Baba Congo, did you have a question, or what is it? Would you like to? Yeah.
Welcome everybody. Yeah, I like everything that everybody says, but I think that the Haitian Revolution brought on the first embargo in the Western Hemisphere that Haiti suffered. France enforced, and everybody went along. And what that did is it did the adjective I have is castration of the country and the people. And there's a continuous bleeding. The U.S. They call us a banana republic because Chiquita banana and everything controls the price of our sugar. Other people control the price of our bananas, and so therefore we're tenant farmers. And what they do, if you don't agree with them, or if you just want to change your mind and go try things a different way, they start with this starvation diplomacy, which also Haiti suffers from continuously. So one thing that we have to fight against the militarism everywhere, both in Africa and the Caribbean and Latin America. And but also we have to fight in those countries, in every country where there's Black people and we have land. They're stealing land from the Blacks in Colombia. They're stealing land from the Blacks in Belize, or not in Belize, but in Guatemala, Honduras. We have some lands that belong to us, and we can't create an economy without control of those lands. And also, quite a few times we don't have the schooling and everything like that. Up to some time ago, before in the government of Nicaragua took place, places like in Nicaragua were cut off, that you could only get to them by boat. Now we got, there was no electricity and things like that. So those are the things that we have to fight, both globally and locally, so that the Black people can stop being on the bottom of the economy, and for them to be able to rise up. And that's what's hurting us the most. Quite a bit of miseducation, but first of all, we have to get educated anyway. And that's what I had to say. And that will bring us up more to what's been happening. Again, is the starvation diplomacy that they're trying to do all around the world. Here's Venezuela has oil, and they won't let them access to what they have, and they, every ambassador in the Americas is dictates and they do it in Venezuela, and they do it, quite a few different places. Santo Domingo, they do it in Haiti, and those things that we have to stop. We have to get our congressional representative to stop that, or don't fund that, and things like that. No one talks about Reagan started the Iran-Contra war, financed it, introduced guns into Central America, both in Salvador and Guatemala, and supporting dictatorships and everything. then there's a spillover or a blowback now that everybody is leaving those countries and coming to the border, and they stopped at the border because, you know, they gave guns to people to just not defend the country, but kill, do all kinds of nasty things. And, you know, and those are the things that we have to stop. It's U.S. policy that causes a lot of stuff. You know, I'm glad to see that in Honduras, a person is elected that her husband was overthrown with a junta, and no one said anything about it. You know, and that was under the Obama administration with Hillary Clinton. Anyway, those are the things that we don't have a lot of time, but I'd like for us to like move up and talk about those things. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Baba Congo. Yeah, we do have some time. We've got at least 65 minutes. So we're good, and we're gonna turn this over to Dr. Horn so that he can have his say regarding the discussions that we've had earlier, and giving us his opinion on the situation with Africans in this decade for African descendants. Dr. Horn.
I apologize to everybody for the audio problems, and thank you for Sister Albina for rescuing me. As again, sisters rescue brothers. What I had wanted to start off saying at the very beginning is that we have been confused, and we are even fighting each other in our confusion, and sometimes fighting the wrong battle. This is what I'm talking about. We still deal with Latin America, South America, Central America. Who are these people? Where are they? We get caught up into their government, their ways of thinking, their ways of people interacting with each other.
Uh-oh.
Dr. Horn, something happened with your phone. Hold that point, Dr. Horn. Dr. Horn, we don't hear you.
Oh, hola.
Wow. Wow.
He's
Is it because Alvin is on mute?
His
The brilliance here already. I don't have to add to this. I can do this at the next session. I'll be at the next session.
You're good now. You're good now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Baba
They can
Musa,
hear you. They can hear you, Dr. Horn.
I thought they could not. Okay.
we hear you now.
The issue I was talking about was, again, the issue of confusion. And in most of my whole Black development in this country, in terms of dealing with how do we get out of the quandary that we're in, we thought only about going directly to Africa. We didn't deal much with the Africans who were a lot closer to us, except for those in Cuba. Cuba was fine. I was in Miami, that was right across the water. But in terms of Central America, South America, Latin America, we didn't deal with those folk as if they were Africans. In fact, they always have been. So the confusion about location, the confusion about systems that we fight for and fight against, we still are looking at the wrong map. That Mercator map that we've all grown up with, which shows Africa at basically the same level, the same size as South America, and acts as if Africa and the United States are just about the same size. That's the map we've grown up with, and it's absolutely not true. Again, that's part of the confusion. We all need to get better maps. We all need to have more authentic maps that show the real African land base so that we understand what it is that we're fighting for. The issue about our becoming more cognizant and more understanding and more clear about the African cultures within Central, Latin, South America is now crucial. There is no Pan-Africanism without all African people. That means whether we're talking about Suriname, or whether we are talking about Barbados, or whether we are talking about Jamaica, whether we're talking about Costa Rica. Wherever African people are, we are talking about reconnecting them back to a united African states. That's what the fight is about. That's what we are dealing with. And by the way, Senghor, that map that they put out, that's a bunch of hogwash. They haven't talked to anybody. They've just done it. It's an ego issue.
Thank you for speaking on that. Thank you. For speaking.
Anybody.
Yeah, glad you're speaking on that.
I don't want to speak too much on it because then some hostility will come out, and I don't want that to come out. But what we have to understand is that we are in this fighting together. This is not a vanity issue for some of us to say, okay, I'm now in charge, and I'm going to do for you what you need me to do for you. You can't do that without talking to me. And a number of people have thrown stuff out there as if they represent African people. The State of the Diaspora, for example, which is a bogus organization. We have to be able to call these people out and say, look, get back with the people before you try to leap in front of the people. You can't represent us without going through us. We are African people. We will be united, but there is no one me. I am going to be the leader of all of you. That's not going to happen. Anyway, that's a whole different aspect that I don't want to go into right now. I'm just glad that I got a chance to listen to some of you brilliant African people, and we can continue this discussion later. And thank you again, Sister Amina.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Dr. Baba Mosi.
I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, if I can, man. First of all, I'm just elated by all of the African warriors that are on here, even those who have not spoken yet. And I know we have a time limit, and I have a lot that I can say, but a lot of what I've heard is very important. But I hear so much Blacktricity and unity in what we're talking about. But in terms of solutions, but it's so many other people on. I just want to appeal to you, Baba Mosi, who are hosting this.
Yes.
If we can allow some time for others that are on the call, because we got really a powerful network of folks on the call.
Okay.
And I'm not just talking about UNIA members. I'm talking about all African People's Revolutionary Party members. I'm talking about the other progressives that we have on. We have quite a few people on.
Okay, we'll give some space. We'll give some space.
Please, because while we got this gathering, that's part of the solution.
All right, I've
Unify.
noticed some, and there's one person who we tried to reach him earlier, but we couldn't get him. The notifications went to his spam, so but we do have him, and he is like others who have spoken before. He deals a lot with the Africans in Latin America, and that's Brother Netfo, and I'll ask him to give his opinion or his view.
Brother Mosi.
Yes.
Brother Mosi.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Finally, I couldn't hear you. I can see you.
Ah,
but now I can hear and see you because I'm on 3 different devices.
well, could you continue from where you stop? Or do you
Yep.
want, yeah, okay.
I could.
All right, let's do that, and then we'll come to Brother Netful after. Okay.
All right.
Okay,
One,
go right ahead.
I want to say that if you've been to Cuba, you know that the population of Cuba is Africans.
Mhm.
In 1958, Cuba had a revolution. The Cuban Revolution, as Cuba would say, was for the children.
Mhm.
And out of this education, out of this revolution, they decided to prioritize health, education, and housing. They have not done a good job in housing because of the US blockade and the inability to get materials. So they have old housing stock that needs serious repair. But they have done miracles with education and with health, including the 3 new vaccines that they've came up with on their own to resolve the problem of COVID-19. I think that in looking at Cuba, the main question is, how did they raise the level of education and health for the African population? Because it's obvious that this raising of the level was done across the board. It wasn't like in other places where, because we started way below everybody, when they raised the level, we're still below everybody. And because of that, Cuba now has more African doctors than any country in the world, including the United States. And there is a struggle to possibly get some of these doctors from Cuba to come to the US to help in the pandemic. At least the International Committee of Black Mayors is trying to do that. And there was an article in the Washington Informer just last week that talked about that. But Cuba was an example, is an example for the rest of the region. And without the US blockade and the US attempt at regime change and all the other stuff that they're doing, if Cuba didn't have to face that, there would be nothing holding it back from development. You have a similar situation in Venezuela, a little different. Venezuela, as you know, Hugo Chavez is the first president in South America to say he's African and indigenous. And he said a lot of things. And probably more folks remember him for saying when he went to the UN that he smelled sulfur. The devil must have been here. Right after. Right, right. But in Venezuela, one of the things that happened right in the beginning of Hugo Chavez's presidency was that they had a mudslide and hundreds of people died who were living up in the barrios, because that's where the barrios are. And they decided that they would build houses and move people off of the side of the mountain so that kind of calamity would not happen again. And they started construction in about 2007. And if you go to Venezuela today, there's new apartments, new high-rises, new buildings everywhere. And they have almost succeeded in accomplishing maximum amount of housing that they hope to build by 2025 already. They have put great emphasis on Africa. When Hugo Chavez came to power, there was, I think, 2 embassies in Africa. I think today they're up to about 10. And most of the ambassadors are Africans from Venezuela. The Afro-Venezuelan network have been leading the struggle in Venezuela to recognize the role and the contributions that Africans have made to not just the everyday struggle historically, but to the revolution, the Venezuelan revolution, the revolution for socialism of the 21st century. You have kind of a similar situation in Nicaragua, where the Africans lived on the Caribbean coast, and most of them still speak English. But these Africans live in what's called the autonomous zone, which is, while they are part of Nicaragua, they make their own decision and come up with their own plans and their own objectives of what they seek to accomplish. Recently, there was an election in Nicaragua in which the Sandinista won, hands down, before the votes was even cast, before one vote was even cast. Biden came out and said the election was not fair, it was stolen, et cetera, et cetera. And we're still trying to find out how he's so clairvoyant that he could see that far into the future, 2 or 3 days, to know what was going to happen. But of course, he was wrong. The election was free, fair, not stolen. And when you talk to the folks who went out to the polls, they told you, they said, Nicaragua has faced 2 hurricanes in the year before. And within the process of 3 or 4 months, their houses was rebuilt, electricity was restored, they had schools repaired, everything, new roads, and they're able to compare that to the US colony of Puerto Rico, where today, 4 years after the hurricane, they still don't have electricity in most of the country. So it was a no-brainer for them to vote for the Sandinista, because who else was going to do that for them? All of these places have one thing in common. They're under vicious attack by the United States government. There is an attempt for regime change. They want to replace the government and determine who should rule the people for them. And so they have a number of projects and programs that do that. Many of you have heard of NED, the National Endowment for Democracy. NED has placed more money into Colombia to help to try to overthrow the Venezuelan government than any other part of the US government outside of USAID. NED is also busy working in Cuba. They were, for the most part, responsible for the demonstration in July that resulted in many people coming to the streets. They're also responsible for trying to develop an internal opposition in Cuba, which they have not been able to do for over 60 years of this blockade. Over 60 years, they have a blockade that has not achieved anything that it claimed it was trying to achieve, but it continues. Every year for the past 12 years, the United Nations vote in majority to demand that the U.S. lift the blockade. But the U.S., of course, can unilaterally decide to do these things to people and have no opposition. If you look at what happened when Biden came to power and he was really just Trump light, he came to power claiming that he was going to change the relationship with Cuba. He has not changed anything that Trump has done, and he has imposed more hardship on the people. And this is happening not just in Cuba, and not only is it happening, but is it happening to our people. It's our people in these countries who are suffering the most. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll listen to everybody else who has, I'm sure, very interested and very documented things to say. Thank you, bro.
Thank you very much for that, my brother. That's the kind of stuff we want to hear, and we've been, and everyone has contributed so well to bringing a picture at this moment of what is going on. But your contribution there about Cuba and Venezuela is so very welcome, because it's one of the things we in the Division 330, we are the UNIA, and we are African oriented, and we said African nationalism and all that, which is I guess contrary to a lot of what some revolutionaries might say Africans should go by, but that's where we're at. And we know for sure that African people are suffering from these actions by the United States against Cuba and Venezuela and Nicaragua. And they, at least from me and from my point of view, and several of my members and those in the RC2020, we feel for those people, and we're thoroughly against this bullyism coming from the United States towards these nations that are trying to incorporate all of its citizens into some wholesome relationship. Baba, let's see. And if anybody else has anything to add, you may do so. We're gonna have a question and answer period here. So if you get your questions together, questions for the presenters, get that ready in a moment. I think Brother Nefta has said he's quite content to listen, because he's heard quite a bit, and maybe what he had to say was similar to what others have already said. So if you have any questions from anyone in the audience who are networked with us, you may bring those questions right now. Or before that, let me say, Dr. Chen, would you do you have anything to say before that? Or Dr. Horn?
Julie, I
Or
really
anyone?
am looking forward to seeing if there are other, as I started,
Yeah.
we could have this conversation about all of the ills and the energies that have been dismantling relations in the region for a while. And I'm just asking again, if we can begin to share like the different organizational entities, brothers and sisters that we could have had involved, because this is a very short time period. Like, we need time to really reflect and respond and share visuals around this particular theme of Africans in these Spanish-speaking parts of the Americas to be able to start to share the historiography, like to give a chronology, things that have happened in the 16th century coming up into the 21st century, things that are supposed to be put in place by different agencies, whether they are reactionary, counter-revolutionary, outright capitalist, imperialist or not, and moving in the direction to how do we build with them through the UNIA, ACL, RC2020, AAPRP, Sixth Region Diaspora Caucus, Pan-Africa Diaspora Union, Global African Congress, the Caribbean Pan-African Network, and any of the other, the Caribbean Peace Movement. There's like Caribbean Rastafari organization, because persons overlook that the different African nationalists, Black nationalists, African spiritual organizations are always linking and strengthening connectivity with Africans in these Spanish-speaking spaces. Cuba is one example of what can be done completely disassociated with America's talents, even though that Guadalajara situation and that in Mexico and that Guantanamo Bay piece in Cuba always makes us kind of go, because there's a lot of power and authority, and that there's vortexes. Like, this is where we start to go into a spiritual space that's not just going to be on the scientific analysis of how we look at this energy that has been allowed to take precedence in Spanish-speaking portions of these Americas. What's happening, and I'm glad that one of the other discussants shared that, what's happening in Spanish-speaking parts of the Americas with Africans is connected to what's happening in Palestine as we speak, with the illegal occupation of lands. And there's been a significant amount of illegality and occupation of lands, exploitation of resources, and outright exploitation and terrorism, not whatever the human trafficking, that's part of it, but outright terrorism that's impacting Africans in, again, with the theme that we've shared in Latin America. And those are some of the things, we've had one of the highest rates of women of African ancestry in Spanish-speaking parts of the Americas being executed, raped, murdered, old-fashioned lynchings. And most persons stay mum. And there are a number of very powerful, many of the environmental justice leaders in these spaces, again, Africans in these Spanish-speaking spaces, are found dead or shot to death. We saw these things happening and it continues. And many times there's very little said. So it's important that when we're having these discussions, and again, we can bring down the historiography, that's very, very important, and share the chronological details. Also to navigate, what are some of these organizational entities that we can add in this piece to help us to be able to do something small first, but move it in the direction so that we don't have to care about what the UN, UNESCO, IMF, and these other organizational entities are doing, because we are bringing the standards of excellence, we are bringing the cultural function areas to the forefront, and we're bringing African revolutionary movement in analysis, in action, in thought, in praxis, whatever word we want, because English is limited. Yeah. And it's really important that we move in that, revolutionary focus. And so that's why you kept hearing me speak of the names of certain brothers and sisters. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Sister Queen Makeda Kamara, who, again, a Panamanian by birth, a Pan-Africanist, global Africanist, Black nationalist, from Black Panther days when she was in the Americas, in North America rather, and the work that she's been able to do to expand that effort to shift from the talk to making sure that our babies come forth born as naturally and as positively and without the high infant or maternal mortality rate, and is one of the best sangomas. I want to make sure I make this clear. Not just a midwife, and definitely not just a doula, because doula really means slave, right? But a sangoma in terms of birthings and helping families to build and stay strong. But we don't know about Queen Mother, Dr. Makeda Kamara. You understand? Coming out of this Spanish-speaking space of Panama and sharing her skills, talents, and expertise, not only in the Americas, but throughout the continent. You know, spaces like Benin, Togo, etc. You know, and I shared that as a way for us to begin, you know, because everyone that's in this discussion, I know has a thread to add to this tapestry of how we hold up the revolutionary movements, the organizational efforts. You know, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Comrade Michael Flores in Belize. You know, a Pan-Africanist engaged in a lot of these progressive works and calling out any of the negativity in terms of the exploitation of Africans in these Spanish-speaking spaces. You know, whether they fight between being indigenous, maroon. I mean, there's a lot. Again, English is really messed up sometimes. I'm gonna stop there.
I hear you, my sister, and that sounds like something the month of March has. I know you already probably has some kind of something in the works, so to speak, for the month of March. I mean, to me, every month is the Women's Month, but yeah, let's face it, the month of March is that month when a lot of discourse is done regarding women, and sounds like something that we can do as well. Despite no matter how many times it's been spoken in March by how many other groups, but the word from us probably should be in contributing as well. So I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just gonna, you know me. I just drop a little hint here and there, you know. Just, but anyway,
as long as Queen Mother Tendai is gonna roll in, as long as Mary Bota and Queen Mother Margot Thomas, you know, I'm a list name. So if you're gonna put me up, then nah.
Yeah, well, you know,
I'm looking at Sister Queen Abina. I'm just saying, I'm just putting it.
Well, yeah, hey.
You know, we family, right? We're family, right?
I've been working on that. She knows, Sister Abina. And hopefully, just like you said, of course, we'd like to have her being part of that as well. I mean, she's been part and parcel of the words, the words. What is it? The words that are coming from the poets and everything else. That type of thing, bringing out the revolutionary words as a poet.
Words, sound, and power.
Yes, my brother. And I see a smile coming from somebody who is very close on the other side, meaning, yes, indeed, you know, he's going to be part of making this happen as well. Aren't you, brother? Not even calling your name. You can smile and we'll know the word you say. There you go.
No, actually, I wanted to make a couple of quick comments. First of all, I would be remiss not to take this opportunity. This is really my kind of real first to first with my brother David Horn, face to face. And I just want to say to my brother how very, very much we appreciate the work that the 6th Diaspora Caucus did with our dear sister who passed, Maisha Washington. You all's embracing of her was one of the dynamic forces at the end of her life. And it really, really was a godsend for her to get involved with the work that you guys did. for the library and some of the other things. And I just wanted to say, brother, I hadn't seen you since the conference in Baltimore. So
2018.
yeah, so it's been a while. Just wanted to say thank you, brother, for that work, and we really appreciate the effort that y'all carried out.
Aisha well represented everybody, every Black person in Baltimore and every Black person in this
the
country.
world. That's right. That's right. I wanted to say that. Then I wanted to kind of, because we didn't really formally acknowledge, but as folks may or may not know, I'm an organizer with the All African People's Revolutionary Party. I'm also on the coordinating committee of the Black Alliance for Peace. Brother Bamboshi, Anthony, Lee, I was hoping I'm not missing anybody. These are my comrades from my childhood all the way up till today. Today we're in different formations there, the AAPRP GC, but and I get in trouble sometimes because I'm of the position there's only one AAPRP, and and it don't really exist yet, because ours is a party that really is advocating the coming together of the political, revolutionary, Pan-Africanist political parties all over the world. And that is our mission, to bring such an organization together. That is the work that we do. That is the work that we advocate. As I tell Baba Mosi and Baba Senghor all the time, whether y'all like it or not, I'm a member of the UNIA. This is my government. you can't put me out. And we all pay our dues somewhere.
That's right.
I really have always appreciated the work with these brothers and sisters since I came to DC in '81. It's been a long time working together. So I wanted to say that. And then finally, I wanted to just address this question of practical work to achieve the objectives that we set for ourselves. And acknowledge that, we're in these formations. We're not all doing the same thing. We're doing different things, but those different things are part of the same thing. They're connected, they're interrelated. And we need to reach to a point where we are coordinated politically and at some stage militarily, because the oppression that we're under is in every realm of life, be it political, military, social, economic, cultural, you name it. They're doing these things to us. In our party, we take this issue very seriously. This question of language, we're to the point now that we have to translate every word that we think needs to be heard into at least 5 languages every time, because we realize that the revolution isn't what we think it is. It is what it is, and it's happening whether we know it or not, in areas where they speak languages that we do not speak and have cultural influences that we do not understand. And the uniting of us in that struggle requires the extra effort to speak more than one language, to understand our various diverse cultures, to reach out beyond our comfort zone and try to find those things that we as a people have in common and unite around those things. For us, and it's very important because you can be a neo-colonialist in Spanish, in English, in French, in Portuguese.
I'm gonna call you.
You know, I mean, there's no limitation to the capacity of any of us in any language to sell out and to work in the interests of our enemies. And if we're not careful, Pan-Africanism will become a neo-colonial enterprise being sold by Amazon and mass produced by Vistaprint. You know, so the struggle and the not having is important to us because we have to build our own capacity. We have to be self-reliant because we're fighting an enemy who does not want to be defeated. So he's doing everything he can to make sure we don't have resources, we don't have understanding, that we're confused, that we're anti-Africa. This is the work of the enemy. So I just wanted to say that we may have differences, and we will have differences, but we have to reach to the points where the differences don't make a difference, right? And that the things that we are dissimilar about is a strength and not a weakness. It just means that our hands is in this pot and that pot and that pot too. And I think that that kind of thinking will push us forward. And I do think it's very important at this level, at an informal level, but after this level, at a more formal level, that our organizations, we got to get together. We got to get together. Some of us are sitting on the organizational history of our people of the last 40 years. We need to share that information with our masses. You know, I'm 65 and I was the young one in the group till Netfa came along. I mean, you know, we got to do this in order to make sure that the sacrifices and the accomplishments that we have achieved are not lost and that are passed on to another generation, putting them in a better place than we were so that they can carry this thing forward. Because like Bamboshi said about the Cuban Revolution, the same is true of the African Revolution. We're not fighting for ourselves here and now. We're fighting for our children and our children's children. We're fighting for a future without this oppression, exploitation, and that means we're fighting to defeat the causes of it. So anyway, I'll stop there and let us keep going.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate that. Let's see now, after that being said, I'm going to open the floor to anyone who has questions for the presenters. And after that, we will, of course, have maybe a final remark coming from presenters if they would like to do so. But right now, the floor is open for questions.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. My brother Rafiki, he hit the nail on it, the head. See, we have to continue the revolution, continue. I mean, we talk solutions. One of the solutions coming out of here that I heard is for us to close ranks, to unify more institutionally, organizationally, and as individuals, many of us have worked with each other for many, many years, and we've crossed many paths. So I just want to thank everybody and thank you first, Baba Mosi, as I do every week when I'm on. I want to thank Division 330 for the vision of doing Freedom Fridays. That's what we call this. And we got to come out of Yurugu, anything Yurugu, anything. We got to get rid of it and build our own, y'all. And we can't do it, as Brother Rafiki said, just like that. So we got to maintain what we already have and put structures together, proper structures, and show the unification, Baba Rafiki. What I want to just reiterate what you said. We got a lot of people, and y'all, we mentioned Sister Maisha. We got a lot of those brothers and sisters that walk with us, work with us, roll with us, rumble with us, that are no longer with us in the flesh, but they with us in spirit. But while we're here, we need to be clear that we need each other and we need to set an example for those that come behind us. Yeah, Brother Neftar is here, and I can name a lot of young brothers and sisters, but what you just said, Rafiki, you are UNIA, man. It's in you. That blacktricity is in you like I don't know what, man. And the reality is we got work to do, and we're gonna do it. And David has always said it, and we're gonna be doing it even when we no longer can do it in this temple, when we're no longer here. So we might as well get busy finishing up this work, build this structure, and crush monopoly capitalism. And I think the best way to do that is for us to build the alternatives and to reach for the minds of our people. I close on that, but I want to thank you, Dr. Chenzira Barmbosi. It's good to see you, brother. Even though they tried to, stop you from communicating with us, you came up with another way to get to us. David, same thing. All the queens, y'all know the sisters always got to be up front. We would not even be around if it were not for our revolutionary African women. So I want to thank all of y'all for being present. Mama Tendai, all of those names that I'm not going to call. Thank y'all for being here. Thank you, Baba Mosi. It's Freedom Friday. Y'all hear me? So we're talking about what we got to do to gain back Africa, our sovereignty, and it's going to come. It's blood. It's war. I mean, so we got every solution possible. Anyway, I close on that point. Raise your blacktricity.
Thank you. And thank you for mentioning we are Freedom Friday, and Freedom Friday is exactly what it says. It's the voice for freedom, and it's being held, or we're saying things on Fridays that we choose, and we will continue to do so long as the struggle continues. And so if anyone else has anything to say, or have if they have questions, fine. We'll entertain those questions right now. The presenters are here to take your questions. If not, I may have to start.
Brother,
I don't have a question, brother.
Oh, what's
It's
up?
Baba Akili.
President General Akili Nkrumah is with us. Thank you, my brother. I did not expect to see you this evening, but
Well, okay, so I can
give
be a
thanks that we
surprise.
have you. Yes.
Yeah, I can be a surprise. I appreciate it. That's why I raised my hand. So I'm gonna lower my hand. And
Okay.
as I heard the last few speakers, but I too thoroughly understand and reiterate what I've heard, because what's necessary is for us to get beyond the barriers that have caused us to be ununited, to unite. It doesn't mean that you reunite and follow me. It means that we reunite in order to lift and liberate our people to another level. The brother that came on, I think it was Rafiq Morris, when I was listening to him, he was more than right on and spot on. What I think we need to understand is that in order for us to secure the liberation of our people, we have to first secure the mindset of our people. We have to change the way we think. We have to change the way we value. If we want to challenge the conditions that exist in our communities, it is incumbent upon us to take the lead and make it happen. Historically, we have each challenged the system. We are now at a stage where we are collectively coming together, regardless of disagreements, to challenge the system of oppression, not just here in America, but throughout the world. One African nation, one African government, one issue, our liberation, regardless of our disagreements. Because we're going to disagree just by virtue of the fact that we've all been oppressed by a different oppressor who had the same agenda. We have to have the same agenda. And that is the liberation of African people and the building of an African government for African people on the continent of Africa, with an African democracy that is defined and designed by us. We hold the future of our race. We have to get past subtle differences for the future of our race. in order to end the suppression, the suppression, the exploitation, the subploitation, we have to stand united as a people. UNIA, ACL, RC2020, as our Division 330 is holding Freedom Friday, is committed to developing and implementation the government of African people. In a government, we don't all agree, but we find compromise, because we want compromise to ensure our direction, our development, our security, and our liberation. I don't want anyone to change their direction. I want everyone to include their direction in a single direction. That is the development of an African government for African people on the continent of Africa. And in that case, you may subject yourself to something for the greater good. And all of us can stand to do that. I thank you, Baba Mosey, for giving me the opportunity to speak. And although I may not have heard everyone, I understand the sentiment. The sentiment is that we have held it, but now folks are fearing age, and we need to make sure we transplant it. So I'm going to say to my elder brothers, to my elder sisters, don't fear age, fear the fact that if we don't do the job, then the job won't get done.
Yeah.
Sanjay Sana, brother.
PG.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Baba Mosi, Brother Neftah put in the chat that he did have two things to share.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so let Brother Neftah share.
I didn't see, I
Yeah, I
didn't
saw
see
it.
that.
I saw it. I
It's
got-
sorry, it's not, I don't want to prolong anything. It was early on. I was just going to mention the International Congress of Peoples of African Descent. It took place in Caracas just before the pandemic. And they actually had a follow-up one that I wasn't able to attend. That was in Caracas in 2019. It was a very inspirational thing. Africans from all over the world were there convening. And I put in the chat a little further up the resolutions that came out of that. As a result of that, it's a link from Black Agenda Report had published it. And then also just the Black Alliance for Peace, we've been doing a lot of this, work around trying to look using Haiti as the entry point to consolidate the work around, Latin America anti-imperialist work, but also uplifting the African presence in these different places. Particularly, we're trying to build a relationship in Honduras with the African organization called OFRENE. OFRENE is, I can't remember the Spanish acronym for it. And then also in Bambosi talked a little bit. I was with Bambosi, we were both in Nicaragua during the elections, and making connections with our African, people on the Caribbean coast. And I was actually in there before. And one thing that should be looked at and that should be instructive for all of us in Nicaragua is the autonomous zones. They actually have autonomous zones as an integral part of the revolution there. The Africans and indigenous people on the Caribbean coast say autonomy is the revolution. And so it's stemmed out of the history of the African people on the Caribbean coast. There was a British colony and was able to, after the British abandoned it, they were able to establish their own communities, intercultural communities with indigenous different languages and cultures and everything. And then when the Sandinista revolution came to power, they recognized this autonomy in terms of a state supported thing where they, had education in their own language, and they still have it, and now they're it's being supported by the revolution in terms of infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, they discuss the struggle to make sure that other people understood, that other Nicaraguan people understood what they mean with autonomy. It's not something that's not a succession. but it's a diversification of the revolution. And so that's something in terms of, I think is instructive for us here. And one of the things, and this is the last thing, it's a whole lot to this stuff. One of the things that Nicaragua is in the forefront of in the Western Hemisphere, in the community of Latin American and Caribbean states, CELAC, which was formed as an alternative to the imperialist OAS, Organization of American States, is establishing and putting forward Latin America as a zone of peace, and to stand up against the interventions and the militarization that the United States is imposing in Latin America, but around the world. And Nicaragua's in that, and that in the International Congress, I'm losing my train of thought because I said I was going to be brief and then making me, but this is the last thing I'll say, is in the International Congress in Caracas, now it's been 3 years already. Wow, time flies. Is that we tried to introduce a resolution that I think probably will probably get more traction now, that include among the resolutions that as African people in the U.S. as a domestic colony, as a distinct, population that deserves and needs the not seen as, part of America or the United States, rather, this, settler colony, but is seen as a group within ourselves that need to be able to regard it as, with our own struggle, and not bound up with, just Latin America in general, U.S. in general. I shouldn't say America. But anyway, that's being considered. It's been considered, didn't get it in there. But now, since then, they've communicated with us the willingness or the interest in looking at that particular item in the future. And so when I make it, if we make it to the next Congresses, then we're going to look at that. But then there's a whole lot to what's going on in Latin America. It's very inspiring to know that the groups are coming together and they're making connections and forging that African, Pan-African ethos in Latin America. So that's something.
Well, that's great news, my brother. And we had a little more time if there was more for you to add, but I do feel good about what I'm hearing regarding that. I had not known of that because, of course, I'm not in the circles. Yes.
Can I just mention two other things?
Yes,
Or
sure.
a couple other things.
That's good.
That the current president has decided to host the OAU meeting in Los Angeles, and there will be people coming from throughout this hemisphere to demonstrate against it. And for folks who have people out there in Los Angeles, please ask them to participate. I wanted to congratulate
OAS.
OAS.
Oh, I was about to say, okay. I was
OAU.
wondering.
No, OAS, I'm sorry.
Okay, all right, uh-huh.
That I just wanted to congratulate Sister Sandra Mason, who, as you know, is the Prime Minister of the Barbados, who just threw the Queen out. It's about time. I wanted to congratulate Exalmarie Castro, who just became the president of Honduras. As you may remember, it was her husband who was overthrown by the CIA that forced them into 8 years of suffering. I want to thank Dr. Chinzera for mentioning the Million Women's March event in the chat. And I want to thank everybody who participated and for all the information that they brought. I'm sorry that I lost communications there for a minute, but we as a people, will always struggle to move forward ever.
I couldn't have. Yes, my
just-
brother, you don't need to apologize for losing that connection because you came back strong, and you know, there's a sense of pride whenever I hear of Africans in places where I don't hear of them progressing in any way, but I know what I've seen with my own eyes in the mountains of Cuba when I saw these African children in their uniforms coming from school in the afternoon, and there lay the future of Cuba. I mean, they were clean. They had their books in their hand. They looked happy, and I saw that, and I felt very good. And that's Cuba, a place that you don't hear much about what's happening in Africanness, except for, of course, with music and sports and so on. But there's also the scientific part that some, as was mentioned earlier, with doctors. There are more doctors coming, African doctors coming out of there, and they can supply the Americas with doctors. You know, so that's part of what we can look, the positive side of the last 8 years we can see happening. But other than Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, just let's touch a little bit. You don't have to go far, but we have Brazil, we have Colombia, we have a lot of other countries that have a significant African population. And what do you see, anybody? What do you see happening, or where's the future of these places for African people?
You're right, bro.
Hmm.
The youth of the future. You know, most coups d'etats are reactionary.
Mhm.
Most coups d'etat are pulled by neocolonial stooges for some European colonizer. But recently, there was a coup in Mali where the brothers who pulled the coup told France to pack up their military and pack up their embassy and get to stepping. And I think that's progress.
Mhm. Yeah. Well,
The youth are coming.
mhm. But you know, on the continent is so large. There are some people who, you know, I think it's larger than Europe can really handle. But we do know, as the President General said earlier, we need a government in Africa that can be so strong and be so significant in the minds or in the mindset of African people, that to build that pride, so that you know, when we have to do something here in the United States or in Latin America or anywhere else in the world, people may have to realize that if they hurt one African, they'll have to deal with the African world. And we do need to get to that point where whatever happens anywhere in the world to an African, there are consequences.
Yes.
And that is not what is happening right now, because we see Colombia, we see West Papua, we see these different places where, you know, the connivance of the Western press in ducking these news. I mean, why is it that we're not hearing of these things? And if there were no internet, if there were no connections or communications and networking, many of us would not know that these things are happening. Our people are being, I mean, they're being slaughtered in West Papua and elsewhere, the African world. And so we need to know that we can do something about it. And I think what we're discussing here is a way in which we can network, which we can connect. And I hope we can do more. It's 9:25. And if there's anything anyone wants to continue with, we've got 5 minutes. Other than that, are there any questions? And I'll turn this over to the good sister, Dr. Tangira.
I appreciate how you do that.
Oh, I do
really
that
like
to you all the time
I
because I
mean,
know,
either.
I know you know, I know you know how to close us out.
I'm first and foremost, I wanted to just make a point of clarification. It was actually, I know her as Empress Chi. I see in the network, it says Dr. File Chi. Give thanks. So, whoa, 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 whoa.
Hmm.
Is that better? Is that better?
Nothing is happening. We're not hearing anything.
Oh,
Yes,
mean,
that's better.
I
That's better,
hear you
Doc.
clear.
You're
okay.
fine, Doc.
Right. I was just making sure there wasn't any reverb. I just wanted to highlight that the links that were shared for the forthcoming gatherings, virtual and otherwise, for the National Million Women's March were posted by Dr. Chi. And that we should, and that everything that's been placed inside of our internal Zoom room has been put into the links connected to where this live stream is on Facebook. So persons can have the time to go over and look at the various links that have been shared by Comrade Nepha, along with others, and so that we can stay linked and stay connected. I'm sure that there are some other links that Baba Dr. Horn, our international organizer of the UNIA ACL RC 2020, can share with us as well around PADU, the Pan-African Diaspora Union, as well as those that are linked to the 6th Region Diaspora Caucus, this SRDC. Brothers and sisters can get more information about the Nubian Leadership Circle, that to be able to know what's going on in those various building blocks of bringing African Black people together across disciplines, across organizational ties, individuals as well as organizations. And it's also important to identify something that has been asked by many people. Some persons overlook the longevity beyond some of the differences that people see, whether it's in the AAPRP, the Black Panther Party, New Black Panther Party, and a host of other organizations within even the UNIA. That's why you hear us specifically speak to the UNIA ACL RC 2020 with that intention of bringing all of these different organizational entities together and be able to establish a layer of governance that truly makes that Pan-African total liberation and unification of Africa within a scientifically socialist government. And I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to shift social governance. That's for us. That allows us to restore African fundamentalism, African sovereignty with power in action, with resources. So we not have to care back. So we don't have to care about how these other neo-colonialist terrorists operate, because we will have our own, we are actually restoring our own wealth to the layer of moving our revolution forward in action, in principle, in multiple languages, as has been shared before. So we're looking forward to being able to have, we have some sisters and brothers that are willing to assist us to bring truth to power, yes, but with the action program, so that we're actually, when we're building for ourselves, within ourselves, to be able to produce and move it to the next level. Freedom Fridays has always given us an opportunity to be able to, one, speak freely, and to take the work to the next level. I really want to encourage brothers and sisters that are viewing and listening to also, if you're not familiar with what the UNIA ACL RC 2020 is and how we're moving forward, please take the opportunity as you're viewing this within the Facebook platform to look at the UNIA ACL RC 2020 Facebook platform. There is a website being revised, upgraded, that's forthcoming. So just keep connected so that you can learn a little bit more. And whether you're in an organization or not, while we will encourage you to be in one, the UNIA ACL RC 2020 is a space that envelops all Africans throughout the globe. irrespective, as long as you are respecting one God, one aim, one destiny, and recognizing the importance of the African race. Period. Yeah. So with that being said, I would really like to also ask if there were any final words of strength and action that anyone had before we close out.
Yeah, Bo. You hit it though, but I want to, especially to my brother Rafiki, I can get to you quickly, brother, you know, but Bambosia, you too. But to everybody, I've been assigned by our leadership to seek out memorandums of understanding. And I want to be clear, we already got those within ourselves, but we want to document that. We want to tell the world why we are unified, what we unify on in a simple memorandum of understanding so that those that come behind us can be very clear that we working together for the same issues, not our differences, but what we have in common. So I'm just shouting out, Rafiki, I'll be talking to you. I know how you roll, as you already said, you're part of the UNIA and you're absolutely right. That's how RC2020 is moving. We ain't moving like yesterday, we're moving like forward, ever, backward, never. So you definitely are UNIA, but all Africans are. But AAPRP, AAPRPGC, everybody, we coming because we want to lock in. We want to lock that in. And I want to make that clear right here so the world can hear it. We already been locked in, but now we're going to lock it in and document it so that you don't be playing around with no disunity, because we got to get around all of the fakers, because there's many fakers out there. You know, we want real revolution. We ain't talking about no glamorous going to Africa and thinking you're in utopia and all that kind of foolishness. We talk about expatriation and taking back our land. End of story. Thank you.
Give thanks. Anyone else?
Oh, my sister.
Just to thank the UNIA for this opportunity. Y'all really don't know. I sat down, looked Bambushi in the eye, and had no conversation like this in the decades. It's been a long time. And so just for making that possible, this is something I really appreciate. Thank you very much. And as always, we say we stand ready for the revolution. Thank you very much.
I'm so glad. Yes.
Anyone else? I'm seeing things in the chat, so I'm just, please bring it forward.
This is Lee Robinson for the African Awareness Association. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'd just like to say, as a member of not only APRPGC, but also what I have from time to time in the African Awareness Association. Now, one of the things that our organization, the African Awareness Association, has been able to do is to build a bridge to unite the Africans with our brothers and sisters in Cuba. We want to build a bridge to unite our brothers and sisters throughout the world. But for at least over 25 years, we have been taking African delegations to Cuba so we can learn from the Cuban Revolution. Also do show our gratitude for all the things that Cuban people have done for Africa and African people. So this year, we'll be taking an annual Black History Education Culture Tour, which will be a free ride travel challenge to Cuba from July the 23rd to 31st. We'd like to extend the invitation to every group that is on this program and its membership and ask them to help us spread the word to let's take the largest African delegation to Cuba. We show our gratitude to our people, learn from their revolution, but more importantly, to make sure that Cuban people know that they are not isolated. We must find a way to end this blockade. So we ask you to come and join us. For more information, you can email us at African Awareness Association 2@gmail.com, or go to our website, which is www.aa-cuba-tours.com. We're making a call to come and join us. We thank you.
Give thanks. Could you repeat that website one more time?
It's www.aa-cuba, C-U-B-A, tours, TOURS.com, C-O-M.
Give thanks. We really
Or did it-
appreciate that. We really appreciate that. Really appreciate that.
Mhm.
Yes, yes, Sister Queen.
Yes, so,
Abina.
yeah, I saw what you put in the text to say it live. Really, I would like to say, and I see that Baba Senghor posted a lot by the Honorable Marcus Garvey, of people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. So all this blacktricity is going on now that we're discussing. We have to really find a way to educate as many people as we can so they can find themselves, so they can join on moving forward and
Okay.
not backward. You have to know who you are. And there's so many of our people who do not know this. And I love this. And I just want one day to see it like it's 1,000 people online listening to all of this education and all of this history that we're talking about. Reaching the masses of the people, but educating them is really key to so many things. And I'm really happy to be on this call. Also wanted to let you know that Dr. Horn had to leave. He had another appointment. We were online and I was trying to think, how can he get in? So I called him and said, look, I'm gonna call you on the phone. I'm gonna put your phone on speaker. I'm gonna put my phone up to my computer and then they can hear you. I believe that can happen. And that's what did. So thank you very much. Keep thinking outside the box.
That's right. We keep defeating technology.
Thank you, sister.
Yes.
Thanks,
Queen.
Oh,
thanks.
much obliged.
Sister Abina.
Yes, Dr. Chen.
So with that being said, as I know we need to respect one another's time in these times, I really hope that persons that were listening, tuning in, or are looking at the recording of this gathering, share with us some links to enhance the discussion in action. Share with us the organizations that are a part of the upliftment of African persons everywhere. Learn a little bit more about the UNIA ACL RC2020 and help us to keep the vibration of building the government that Africans around the world need into the heights. We've had an opportunity to also learn more about different organizations tonight that are already engaged in doing work with our African brothers and sisters in the revolutionary flow throughout the Spanish-speaking Americas. Let us extend that to the entire globe. We talk about recognition, justice, and development. Recognition and justice and development are part of what African people have been moving towards in our revolutionary efforts from time immemorial. So let's keep those things in the heights. As we say forward ever, backward never, we also say amandla, we're pushing for power. We're saying isweletu, we're adding that vibration. And when you hear people say hotep, it's not just peace, you know. It's tranquility grounded in sovereign power. Remember that. It's a very powerful energy that we bring to the table. With that being said, I always encourage our brothers and sisters, raise your right fist. One God.
One God.
One aim.
One aim.
One destiny.
One destiny.
One destiny.
Definitely knowing that victory is certain. And with that, we definitely say, Hotep, Alafia, hail, my brothers and sisters.
Praise your blacktricity.
Give thanks, give thanks, give thanks. It's been an honor and a privilege.
Backward never.
Yeah.
Give thanks.
Yeah,
All right.
all y'all beautiful African people.
Yeah, this has been powerful. Grateful for all that are here, and thank you for sharing the information inside of the chat here in Zoom, which is also being replicated into the live stream piece on Facebook for those that are viewing. Have a wonderful, blessed evening.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very much.
Queen. Thank you.
On with the revolution. Forward with the revolution.
Later.
Yeah.
Lee.
Aluta
Yeah.
continua.
Brother Lee.
Speaking.
Lee Africa.